What is up, YouTube? My name is Marcus, aka Apostle, and today I'm going to show you everything that you need to know about runes and Spellbreak. Runes are one of the key features in Spellbreak and definitely something that you're going to need to master if you want to get really good at this game. So we're going to do a quick rundown of how each rune works, and then I'm going to talk about which runes I think are best and the situations in which you should be using each individual rune. But before we get into it, I'm going to let you guys know that I do stream every day. Be sure to check out the link down in the description below. I'm playing other games right now since Spellbreak is down, but if you have any questions about Spellbreak or just want to come and hang out, be sure to check that out. Alright, let's go ahead and get into what each rune does now. We're going to start with the common rarity runes and then work our way up to the epic rarity ones. First off, we've got Featherfall. When you use Featherfall, it launches you straight up in the air, and then you float up there, and then slowly come back down. The issue with the Featherfall rune is that once you're up in the air, you are kind of a sitting duck, you have no cover usually, and you're just slowly floating down, so anybody that's good with ice or lightning is just going to pick you off. The only way to fall faster with the Featherfall rune is if you pull it out of your inventory and drop it on the ground. That'll negate the floating effect, but it's kind of a pain in the butt to do. Next up, we got Invisibility. Invis does basically exactly what it sounds like it does. It makes you invisible for up to 10 seconds. You're not completely invisible, you still have like this kind of shimmery, shiny effect, but you're pretty transparent once you have it activated. It's worth noting that if you cast any spells, primary or secondary, that it will break your invis, and then you gotta wait for the cooldown before it's back up. Other than just making you invisible, invis also increases your movement speed by quite a bit. The last of the common runes is Spring Step. When activated, Spring Step sends you hopping in an arc-like motion. This is a really quick movement, and it could also be used in any direction. So if you're walking backwards, it's going to make you hop backwards. If you're moving to the right, it's going to make you hop to the right in basically any direction. It's worth noting that Spring Step has a cooldown of 5 seconds, which is the shortest of all runes. Moving on to the rare runes, we got Flight. Flight is probably the coolest rune to use in the game. It just feels really cool and just intuitive to use, and it just feels nice. I don't know, it just makes you feel pretty awesome while you're using it. When you activate Flight, it sends you soaring through the air for 5 seconds. However, you can cancel your flight early by jumping. The next rune on our list is Chrono Master. When activated, Chrono saves your position and your health values, and then 4 seconds later, it'll rewind you back to those values. However, if you die while using Chrono, you don't come back from the dead. The last rare rune that we have on our list is Teleport. When activated, you'll teleport to the location that your mouse cursor is pointing at. This is designated by this purplish pillar that you can see moving around the map. Teleport has a pretty long cast time, and it also can be cancelled on accident if you choose an invalid location. It is worth noting that it doesn't just teleport you forward, but it could also teleport you up to higher places. That's all the rare runes. Let's move on to the epic ones. First up, we got Wolf's Blood. When you activate Wolf's Blood, it basically gives you wall hacks for 12 seconds. If you don't know what wall hacks are, it just basically means that you can see your enemies through walls. Unfortunately, when you cast Wolf's Blood, it's really loud and it has a big visual animation. So you may know where enemies are around you, but they also know where you were at when you casted it. Next up on the epics, we have Dash. When activated, the Dash rune dashes you forward. Similar to the Spring Step rune, you could use dash in every direction, and what it does is it dashes you forward, backwards, or left and right. While you're mid-dash, you can actually control your direction by looking around, so you can dash up in the air, you can dash in circles, and you basically just have really quick movement over a short range. Last up on our list of runes is Shadow Step. When activated, Shadow Step teleports you a short distance and also makes you invisible for a short amount of time. Unlike Dash, Shadow Step is only controlled by where your cursor is aiming. This means if you're strafing or walking backwards, you're still going to Shadow Step where you're aiming. Alright, so we've talked about what each rune does, but which one should we use? It's pretty unanimous that all the runes that are short burst movement runes tend to be the best runes. When I mean short burst movement runes, what I'm talking about is Spring Step, Dash, and Shadow Step, and even Flight if you cancel it. I would say Flight is the worst out of the 4, and that's because it has such a long cooldown timer. The reason these short burst runes are so good is because really your only defense in Spellbreak is your movement. What this means is your primary way to avoid damage is to dodge the attacks. Spring Step, Dash, and Shadow Step are all extremely good for dodging your enemy's incoming attacks. And since they all have relatively short cooldowns, this allows you to use them all multiple times in a fight. Whereas with the longer cooldown runes, you usually only get to use them once unless you have a belt that increases your maximum rune charges. Managing your rune charges and your cooldown of your rune is one of the biggest things when it comes to winning fights in Spellbreak. One of the things you really have to be careful about is not burning your rune charges unnecessarily. You really don't want to be spamming your runes unless you absolutely have to. Like I was saying earlier, your main defense in Spellbreak is dodging, so as soon as you burn all your rune charges, you basically lose 90% of your defense. There's a couple things you should really know about your rune cooldowns. The first is that if you have multiple rune charges and you use a rune before your next charge is fully off of cooldown, it won't only use one rune charge, but it will also reset the cooldown timer. So say you're using dash and you only have 1 second left on your next rune charge. If you use your rune before that 1 second's up, your timer is going to completely reset and you're going to lose not only the rune that you used, but also the 4 seconds of cooldown that were cooking your next rune charge up. So you basically use 2 rune charges in one instead of waiting the extra second and using your rune once the second charge came off cooldown. There's another really big thing about rune cooldowns though. Say you use your rune to go up into the air. If you stay in the air for the entire time of the cooldown, even though technically you waited the time for your rune to refresh, it won't actually refresh until you actually touch the ground. The only exception to this is if you're using the Tempest class and you're wind jumping. Wind jumping basically counts as touching the ground, so if you wind jump in between your rune uses, it'll reset once the timer's up. When I started playing this game, I developed a really bad habit of always dodging straight up into the air. So what would end up happening in a fight was I would dodge up into the air, and then even though my rune was off cooldown, I wouldn't have my second rune charge and I'd be a sitting duck. Even though you usually want to be above your enemies, being in the air for too long can be a detriment. One thing that I like to do is that if I use my rune to dodge up into the air, is to use my next rune charge to dodge back down to the ground and touch the ground. Usually just touching the ground without using your rune charge is the best option, but if you need to get out of the way of something while you're in the air, try to dodge downwards. So that way you'll touch the ground and you'll reset your rune cooldown. Although Spring Step, Dash, and Shadow Step should be your top priorities, you're not always going to find it, so we're going to go into some other runes to help you out. Invis could also be really good if used correctly. The main thing that you don't want to do with Invis is use it while you're right in front of your enemy. The reason is you don't go completely invisible, so you're going to pop your Invis, waste your rune charge, and then they're just going to know where you're at anyways. Usually what I'll try to do with Invis is run around a corner and break line of sight and then pop it. Or if the enemy hasn't seen me yet, I'll pop it before I go into combat and get the jump on them really easy. Chrono basically gives you the ability to trade damage. What I mean by this is if you run into a fight and you pop Chrono and you just basically stand in front of somebody and shoot them and let them shoot you, all of your damage is going to be permanent, but then when you rewind, you're going to get all of your health back. There are a few issues with Chrono though, so if you do too much damage to the enemy and they start running away, you're going to rewind and actually create distance between you and the enemy and allow them to get away. Also, if the enemy is good and just realized where you popped Chrono, they'll just avoid your damage, wait for you to rewind, and then cast a big spell on you to do a bunch of damage right as you rewind. So you gotta be careful because when you use Chrono, it's really predictable if they see where you're going to rewind to. Teleport can be really useful for escaping. There's a couple issues with teleport, and that's that it has a really long cast time, so you can get killed before you actually pop it. And also, if you're trying to use teleport fast, you won't always teleport to where you want to, and it could also just get canceled, and you'll end up standing there and taking a bunch of damage because your teleport got canceled and you thought you were supposed to move. If you are using teleport to escape, you can actually cast it and spin so that way the enemy doesn't realize where you're teleporting to. If you just cast teleport, the enemy is going to know that you're teleporting exactly where you're looking, so they're going to know where you're at. But if you look a different direction during the cast time, it could really throw off your enemy and they'll have no idea which direction you went. Flight can also be useful to escape, but you really want to be moving around while you're in the air. If you're flying in a straight path, you're usually just going to get shot in the back by somebody who's decent with ice. So try to make your flight path unpredictable if you're trying to use it to escape. Also, don't forget that you can cancel flight quickly and use it just to dodge somebody's attack. Wolf's Blood is pretty dangerous to use. The animation can be seen and heard from so far away that it'll usually bring in more enemies that you don't want to fight. So if you do use Wolf Blood, you usually want to get far away from where you used it as quickly as possible. Featherfall is a funny rune. I say that because basically every new player loves using Featherfall. I know I did when I first started playing. But Featherfall is really one of the worst runes in the game. The only time Featherfall gives you an advantage is if you know you're not going to get focused down while you're in the air. Other than that, your movement is so slow with Featherfall that if somebody sees you and wants to shoot you, you're a really easy target. You're basically exchanging a height advantage and giving up all of your cover and movement. If you guys are looking for more Spellbreak content, be sure to check out the rest of the YouTube channel. I've got a lot of gameplays, a lot of other tutorials, a bunch of stuff like that. Also, don't forget to check out the live stream down below. I try to stream every day, but Spellbreak is down until early March, so there won't be any Spellbreak until then. But if you guys want to still come in and ask Spellbreak questions, I'm completely open to that, or if you just want to hang out, I'm open to that too, so be sure to check out the live stream. Anyways, I appreciate you guys checking out the video. If you enjoyed or learned something, be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps the YouTube channel grow. My name is Marcus, aka Apostle, and I'll see you guys next time.